Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast, brought to you by Huntworth. Huntworth gear for all types of weather, all types of terrain, all types of budgets. It's clothing that just works. Check them out at huntworthgear.com. This week's podcast, we are talking to good friend Andy Hutchens of the Deer Camp podcast, and we're just talking about, bringing back that deer camp vibe and kind of what that means to Andy, why he started the podcast. We talk a little bit about some of the shows. We talk a little bit about antler point restrictions. We talk about kids and hunting, all those types of things. As we get into, turkey season is like what kicks off deer season once again. So I guess hunting season rather. So turkey season is that precursor to kind of get your mind right for getting your gear set up for tack, to give you an opportunity to get back in the woods. For the guys that are down south, I mean, it's a totally different thing for us up in the north. But for me, the longer days, the warmer temperatures, it's just got me thinking about hunting. And I think that's kind of what we all need, right? So real fun podcast, real great to talk to Andy. And then a couple of housekeeping notes. I wanted to mention, I keep forgetting it in the intro, that the Muskegon Bowman's Club is having their annual fundraiser dinner for the MB Archery Foundation, April 26th. So we've got tons of great prizes donated. We've got a face-off e-bike that we're raffling off. We've got one of the water feather boats that they had donated. Tons of guns, tons of bows. It's an incredible event to raise money for, something that's near and dear to my heart. I'm on the board for the Bowman's Club. So it's great to be able to be part of that, and just really looking forward to that event. So if you guys can make it, April 26th, Muskegon Bowman's Club. And if you can't make it, but you'd like to donate, if you have questions about any of the prizes, anything like that, feel free to reach out to us. Actually, Andy, we talk about it a little bit on the podcast, but he donated some prizes to the Bowman's Club for us. So really, again, thankful to him. And just it's a great, really fun event. A little bit more wholesome, down home, I guess, than some of these like cookie cutter ones, like I guess I won't even say it, but there are some that show up in a box, you unpack them, this is how they run, and this is the money that you make. But this one is going for something, like I said, that, we're giving back to youth archery. This year we've paid for the shooter jerseys, new targets for our youth archery program, and the nonprofit is really in its infancy, and we're looking to do some scholarships and other things like that with the money raised for kids in our archery program going forward. But like I said, it's in its infancy. I think the nonprofit is less than a year old. So anyways, definitely check that out. Support the guys that are donating, as well as people who support this podcast. Huntworth, Latitude, you can use code BHC to save 15%. Big Shot Targets, code BCP to save 10% over there. Genesis 3D, they also have a Patreon code for the Patreons, as well as Painted Arrow gave us that code BHC15 to save 15% on all their stuff. But fun podcast, great guy, and he's actually speaking this weekend at the Deer Hunter Collective up in Mayo, Michigan. I think there's still tickets available if you guys want to try and snag some of those. Going to be a couple of the Patreons up there. We've met some great people up there at that podcast, that live podcast. Great space, great event, and definitely something to check out. But as always, thanks for listening. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. And today I've got a good friend, Andy Hutchens, Hutchy, for maybe some of you guys that have met him or have heard about him. And just going to talk some deer camp type stuff. It seems to be kind of like a theme over the last couple of podcasts, and even the one that's upcoming, about kind of like that, bringing the fun back to hunting. And there's so many people who, kind of like dog the small bucks and the little deer and all of that sort of stuff. But I think that and then we're also talking about like hunter numbers and retention and all this stuff. And is it better? Is it worse? All of the kind of BS. And I think what Andy's kind of latched onto or started to focus on is like some of the best parts about hunting, which is sometimes it's not even the killing at all. So we're going to talk about some of that stuff. So how you doing tonight, Andy?
I'm doing well, Adam. How you been, my friend?
Not too bad. Not too bad. I've been working an exorbitant amount for myself, which is like a full day's work week for normal people. Um, but yeah, things are going well. So let's talk a little bit about yourself and, so I met you, I think actually at, the first, Deer Hunter Collective, like when you did the live podcast, I think you were up there and then all of a sudden you were in the Patreon group, and then you were the first guy to raise his hand and help, and you were probably the first guy set up at the Patreon camp, and and yeah, so for yourself, what is like your background in like hunting and I guess specifically because you're the host of the Deer Camp podcast, what is your history with like deer camps in general?
So I grew up going to your typical Northern Michigan rifle camp. The bacon grease cooking on the stove, the beer drinking around the poker table, the poker game, with my dad when I was a little kid, and that'd have been back in the '80s. We would do a lot of deer drives, and we'd call it being a dog. And the kid being the dog, walking through the woods, climbing under the brush, pushing all that stuff. So just kind of your typical, I mean, what I guess I would call a typical deer camp. No one stayed there. It was more like a social club. And I kind of missed that whole aspect of, I got out of it for like 10, 15 years and kind of missed it and kind of pushed back into getting into started the podcast, talking about it.
Yeah, but I mean, there had to have been something in between there because there isn't, there's lots of guys that probably had that same experience. Maybe not, being the dog, or maybe they had an actual deer camp that they went to and stayed at. But the guys that got out of it and then they never came back, or they haven't, if that were the case, if that were the everyman story, then there'd be, 1,000 deer camp podcasts. That's all anybody would ever be talking about. So, like, I guess like what reignited like the flame for it?
I guess probably what reignited the flame, honestly, was getting away from thinking I was some giant buck killer. And I shot a nice buck, 15 so years ago. And I thought I was some special, gotta kill the biggest deer every time, gotta do it with, the hardest equipment I could. And kind of got away from that, or not, didn't get away from that. It was really ruining my hunting seasons. I was, so focused on trying to kill a giant, or at least, a Michigan giant, that I kind of I got wasn't fun anymore, if that makes sense. And so I just kind of got into well, let's see here. Honestly, it probably would have been, coming to the Patreon camp, honestly, is what reignited my whole, camaraderie of, being around guys in camp, rather than just going out behind my house and hunting and shooting something and hanging up in the barn, and maybe a buddy or two comes over and that's it, and then it's over. As when you harvest something, it's over that fast, and you don't want the whole experience to be over that fast. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, but I thought you'd be a good guy to talk to about this because over the past couple of years and since that Patreon hunt, I'm going to kind of say that you kind of big timed us, and you were like, all right, I'm out. I'm not coming to your camp anymore. I got these other invites. I got these other guys, these other networks that I'm going to try and plug myself into, see if I can push myself further up the ladder. And we'll get to that here in a minute. But like, I know that you've hunted like at some outfitters and you've done some of that stuff. So in the interim, like when you were trying to quote unquote be that big buck hunter, like I've never been to an outfitter hunt where like I stayed at the lodge or like where I had a place to stay or had been around guys that I didn't really know. So what is that experience like from a hunting camp versus you came to our camp and you really didn't know anybody either?
Yeah, I guess how would I explain that best? It's that was mainly for, I'd go to these big buck states to these outfitters with, intentions of there's, 150s around every tree, which is just not the case. I'd been to a couple, well, I went to, one in Ohio that was just an absolute shit show of a outfitter that was, it might as well have been behind my house and I was the outfitter kind of thing. Um, so there's the grand illusion that if you go to an outfitter, you're gonna shoot a giant buck. Now, that's true if you go to a high fence, but I wasn't going to high fences. I was going to, regular outfitted hunts. Yeah, it would be. Oh man, you got me tongue tied on this one.
That's
Uh,
what I do. That's part. It's
I know you do. That's why you're the bow hunter guy. Um, Oh, it was fun. I enjoyed going. In fact, actually, I met a good friend that I've actually went to Indiana with a couple times at an outfitted hunt in Kentucky. We both hit it off, became friends. He lives in Maine, and we didn't last year, but the 2 years prior to that, we went to we meet up in Indiana and go on a hunt, which was cool. You meet friends from all over the place doing it that way.
But what's the experience like? Because I mean, I can relate to like the Michigan deer camp, and I think probably the being able to showcase that camaraderie. I think the hunting public and Jake's deer camp, like with his family, and it shows the guys going out to the tavern and all of that. Like that really resonates with me from like my childhood because I had a very close to a Wisconsin. I mean, we're 7 miles from Wisconsin type experience up there, and it was the tavern, it was the deer camp, it was that. And then you got like Johnny Stewart and his camp that in Bowhunter Tonic they show that pretty good, but I think a lot of times it ends up being about the kill. So when you're at these outfitters, you paid a bunch of money, you kind of go in with some sort of expectation. When you were a kid, you were just there for the good time. So, I mean, it's easy to have those late nights and those drinks and those laughs when there's no money on the line, right?
Yes.
So at an outfitter or like a guide, how does that go? And is there like any animosity between guys where, oh, Ted over there, he's thinks he's the best hunter in the whole world and he's in the good spot, and he's you know what I mean, like.
You're absolutely nail on the head right there. That is 100% exactly what happens on these things. Especially if somebody's seeing deer and somebody's not seeing deer. It's there. Well, what did he do? Did he give him a better tip, or how did that? So yeah, exactly. It's or that guy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He can't hunt. So it's definitely not the camaraderie like let's say we get together, public land kind of, or a regular deer camp. It's everybody's there. You're not partying till late in the night. You're basically hunting all day, eating dinner, maybe have a drink or two, and then go to bed. Getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning every day, and so it's fun, but it's a different kind of fun. That makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know. And I'm kind of asking maybe like a little bit selfishly because I've got like one of our other Patreons, he puts on and is involved with it's like a deer camp ministry kind of thing. It's like not like super Bible thumping, but it's like a definitely like kind of like men's reset type thing. And I'm going to have him on here, coming up shortly. And he keeps sending me these invites, and I'm sure that it would be great and all this stuff. And there's the ego in me that says like, I that isn't the hunt for me. But at the same time, I think that the hardest part is being like, I read through these things, and it doesn't matter the outfitter. I know that there was an elk outfitter like right next to where we hunted last year, and it's like, you sit here. You can't move. You can't do anything. Don't leave your stand. We're gonna come get you and we're going to bring you back. And uh, I just don't know how that jives with my personality, no matter how big the deer.
I agree with that. I mean, it was when I first started going to outfitters, which I don't even know, probably 10 years ago. It was a because I watched it on TV. And that's what the guys were doing. You watch the Michael Waddell go to go to 7J Outfitters, and they're feeding you this beautiful meal and they're taking you to the stand and you got deer everywhere. Well, I mean, that's what everybody thinks they're going to do when they go to an outfitted hunt. Well, that's really not the case because I don't know what the percentage is on bullshit outfitters, but I would say it's a lot higher than lower from from my own experiences so far. And I could tell you some stories.
Well, I mean, you got the floor here. So, I mean,
Well, I'll give you a prime example. We during COVID 2020, we had booked a hunt with an outfitter, and I won't say the name, but an outfitter in Buffalo County, Wisconsin, and we were supposed to stay in these cabins in this town where there's a tavern across the street for food and all that stuff. And at the last second, got pulled that we were going to stay. Or they sold it to us as a hey, we're going to put you in this instead of staying here, we're going to put you in this nice log cabin down in this holler, and you'll have it all to yourself. You have the farm all to yourself. And we're like, yeah, this is great. Well, when we show up and we find out that this cabin has no running water, has an outhouse, which is, it's fine if you know this going into it. If you show up not thinking this, it's a little bit different. We find out that we are all hunting, basically four of us hunting on the same ridge, within 100 yards of each other, each direction. So it was kind of one of those things like, all right, so we just paid $5,000 for this hunt, and basically we're getting $100 worth of use out of this thing. So, it's one of those things, you make the best out of what you got. And we saw some big bucks way off in the distance. Nothing close, nothing, my buddy hit one, I take that back, but it was a fluke out of the nowhere, came running out of some brush and one of those things. But another one I went to that was bad was in Ohio, and that was, same thing. It was, they ran a shit ton of you could just tell they ran a shit ton of guys. There was 20 some guys in camp. And I remember sitting in one ladder stand, and I'd watch deer at like 45 yards come, look at the stand, and then just keep on going. As there had been, someone in that seat, either the week before or the entire season, who knows. So, kind of things like that. Let's see. Illinois, had great experiences in Illinois, other than I shot a penalty buck, which that's another whole other story of, you go to an outfitter and there's a minimum and you don't quite hit that minimum, you're getting that checkbook back out. I don't know. I guess I got over, trying to pay for these hunts.
yeah, no, I can see that. Not, it seems like I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't like ask you like how much like due diligence did you do? Like, did these outfitters come recommended to you from somebody? Did you just find them on Facebook? Like, you know what I mean? Because like when you're looking, sometimes like when you're looking for like the cheapest, you're gonna get the cheapest. Sometimes, I mean, $5,000 in Buffalo County, that could be the cheapest, and it just it is what it is.
So
I'm just curious, like that
So it's
research.
funny, the Buffalo County one, like, because that one was, probably half, that one was, I'd been to quite a few before that. That one actually, I did all the research, talked to guys that went there. Actually have a buddy that owns a farm out there that actually used to hunt with this outfitter. So everything was, on the up and up. Well, the thing was, from when I booked to when we went, the outfitter sold the business to one of his employees, and his employee, on our way, it was my brother and I went, and on our way out there, I called the guy, the outfitter guide, whatever and he's like, hey, I can't talk right now, I'm hunting. Well, that right there was the first no, I think, on a guided hunt. You go on a guided hunt, the guide's out hunting. Well, shouldn't he be like trying to find you deer? That's, so it just went downhill from there. So, but yeah, it was one of those. Now, Ohio was a Facebook thing. I found it online, and it was like a Black Friday deal. And, and I got the Black Friday treatment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious because I mean, Frank has done a couple of outfitted hunts, and one he got boned on it with, they had all the trail cam pictures, they had all this stuff, and everything was good, and they were talking back and forth with the guy, and then come to find out they were supposed to have the spot that wasn't hunted, and then they let every Tom, Dick, and Harry that was in their family hunt that, but they didn't let any clients hunt it, so it was hunted to shit. They had a really good experience in Nebraska. That's where Frank missed the world record, like the new, typical world record 12 point at 20 yards. That was his fault, but kind of like the same thing. He had been sitting in these blinds and they just weren't seeing deer, or they were off in the distance, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to bring my climber in if that's all right." And they let him hunt in his climber, and that deer came right down, stood at the base of his tree, walked out to 20 yards, and Frank shot right underneath him. And but he had to kind of do some work, and they allowed him to do that. So I'm just always curious, because like I said, the hardest part for me would be like, I guess I've said it before, like in reference to like the trail cameras and stuff, but I'd just rather not know. Like I would rather not be told like what's out there, or like I'd rather just go try to figure it out on my own, instead of like take somebody else's word for it. I don't know, but like I said, I just kind of want to know like about the experience from like that style of deer camp, right? Because I mean, you've talked to a lot of guys now, and you've been to quite a few camps, and so that type of experience kind of moved you towards trying to get back out there and do it on your own, or like after that last outfitted hunt, like what was the mindset for the next season?
The mindset for the next season was just go out and have fun again. We went to. I got sick and tired of throwing money at basically throwing money at a dartboard, and it just not why spend all this money when I can go and go do it myself and enjoy. Because I mean, at home I'm an opportunist hunter. I'm not. If that deer walks out and it excites me, I'm going to shoot it, and it doesn't have to be a giant. It can be what it is. So just basically getting back to roots, and not so much being about the hunt, being more about the hanging out with everybody, like like what you do with the Patreon hunt.
So I guess what is the draw, right? Because I mean, when you talk about like, oh, I just want to have fun again, like you could argue with some of these big buck hunters that I mean, you could argue with like the world's worst bow hunter, like to some degree, that shooting big bucks is fun, like, and maybe that's the only kind of fun that you want to have. Everything else is not fun. Like you think it's fun, like not shooting deer, like you think it's fun, like like shooting little things, like what I'm saying. Like for me, that I think that kind of bears the question of like, what is fun for you? Like what do you enjoy about the camp atmosphere, like for guys that have never done it?
I enjoy like the guys that aren't that experienced, getting those guys, helping them find sign, helping them get out and go there. And then I also just like bullshitting, having a beer, sitting around talking about whatever. It doesn't have to be, there's a I've got the picture somewhere. It might be when we were all standing around the table underneath the canopy at the Patreon hunt, and just I don't even remember what we were talking about, but everybody had a smile on their face, and that's it's I guess the difference between that and the outfitted where you're there for a certain mission and everyone else is there for the same thing, and everyone thinks that they're guaranteed a deer and they're not. Which I mean, we can circle back to that because I mean, I went to a high fence 2 years in a row with my father-in-law, and I had a ton of fun doing that. That was a lot of fun. I was there for the atmosphere and to see the deer. It wasn't like it was a hard hunt. It was hey, that one's in your price range. That one's not. That one's, But I saw some sweet deer. The camp atmosphere was awesome on it. It didn't have that feeling of pressure, I guess.
Yeah, I can see that with, and I think you make a great point for like that, kind of like that high fence thing, because I would imagine that the expectation is much different. and not that the expectation is like so much higher. Like, oh, I'm gonna shoot. I mean, and maybe it would, but we've all heard the stories, and like, uh, one of my cousins got married on a high fence ranch in Wisconsin, and like we were literally like, you're at a wedding reception, right? You're having some beers. Well, just over the hill is, 140, 130, 150-inch whitetails. They're just, and so we're sneaking up on them, and there's elk out in the field, and we're glad we had binoculars, we had binoculars, and but the expectations were like it was going to be a turkey shoot, and it really didn't matter. We weren't hunting, but if my 9-year-old daughter would have had a rifle, she would have, she'd have been able to harvest like the biggest buck that I've ever seen. And, that's, I think that's interesting is because I imagine you would go there for the atmosphere. And if you went into it with the mindset of being like, that whatever you would shoot there is, and I don't even know how to say this, like with a straight face, like, for some, like, cause everybody's like, oh, well, just hunt your hunt. Like, that's not hunting. Like, I don't,
It's not.
you know what I mean? And we've all heard the stories of like them corralling like the biggest bull into the area so that the guy can shoot it, or like they just let the biggest one go in this one little fenced in area so you can stalk it. If you're going to use that as like your measuring stick against other hunters or like your other accomplishments, then like, I got nothing for that. But if you're going to go there and you're going to be like, dude, I shot this mute thing that I was on a cull buck hunt, and like there was, I can just imagine like Texas, like aoudad and like a zebra, ostrich ran by me, and that like your stories would be so outrageous that like why not? Like you'd be there for the story more than like the actual hunt, right?
Yeah, actually, absolutely. It was, I didn't go into it with the thought of, oh, I'm gonna kill this big giant buck and I'm gonna be so proud of it. I'm gonna show everybody. I went as it was, my father-in-law loves going on those kind of hunts, and he was apprehensive about asking me. He said, would you even do this? And I said, yeah. I mean, it's like it's not something I'm gonna go out and pursue. But if it's something you want to do, I'll definitely tag along and go have a good time. And and it was a good time, But I mean, I have a 160-inch 11 point that I have Euro mounted, so it's one of those things. It doesn't mean as much as the deer that you kill behind the house when you do all the food plots, or off public land, or especially when you have your buddies with you. And my favorite thing to do is track. And to get with that group of guys, I mean, I know it's dumb to take 20 guys into the woods and track, but man, it's so much fun.
Yeah, I think that there's, with every hunt, there's so much to be learned, right? Like those animals are teaching you lessons every time, and every mistake that you make, you should be learning from. But at the same time, if you're going to take 20 guys tracking, everybody's going to learn something, and especially like at night is one thing, I mean, I think it's more fun. It's more aesthetic. It's, because there's like the sense of adventure of like, you don't know what's out there, but like when you're tracking during the day, everybody, if you have 20 guys, like you're not, generally speaking, you're all not on the same trail. Like, people are on blood. People are just like straggling along until you don't find blood. But those guys are all scouting, and they're looking at different stuff, and they pick up on different things. And, there's so much to be learned. There's so much, adventure. But I want to kind of go back to what you're talking about with the high fence thing. Is like, it is like just about everything else that we talk about with the hunting, about those memories, right? Like, again, if you're not putting your heart and soul and like hanging your hat on it, like that's how, because you're a good hunter that you killed that 160, you're still there, I think about like Chris and Jack Langlois this year. Like Jack won a veterans hunt at the Legends Ranch, and Chris went along with him, and he's sitting there like drinking an old fashioned pet and like a buck, and they killed some giant doe. But just to share that experience together, it's something that they'll never forget. And you and your father-in-law, same deal. It's like, whether you thought he liked you or not when you married his daughter, like you guys went to a place with guns and he didn't shoot you. So
I came back, yeah.
and sharing those experiences, you guys will have those memories like forever.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first year we went, he did not kill until like literally we were getting ready to leave. Like I had the truck packed, we were ready to go because he knew the deer he wanted, and they kept jumping from blind to blind, and that was another like what was really kind of fun about it is I mean it was the place we hunted was 15,000 acres of, one fenced in area, 15,000 acres. So, I mean, they know they'll lose deer in there. They said they'll lose, we might not see a deer for a couple of years. And it's only because they just miss it every time. It's at a different station, but you'll hop around, so it's almost, it's not hunting, but it's hunting in the same aspect. If you're jumping around from spot to spot, trying to, go to the go where the next corn feeder's at, riding in the feed truck. But I probably had more fun shooting javelinas and pigs off the Sandero truck than anything else on that trip. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's something I really want to go do is shoot some pigs. But I honestly, I thought you were going to say we were all packed up and we were driving out and he was gun out the window.
No, those penalty fees there are really expensive.
Yeah, they had to send up the helicopter to go move it over towards him.
Well, it was one of those so basically you have when there's a deer that's in your class for that thing and you have the opportunity to kill it, you can or you can hold out. Well, if you hold out and decide that's not the deer you want to take, your hunt is, they consider your hunt fulfilled at that point. Well, he didn't like the first deer, he didn't like the second deer, didn't like the third deer. Well, so it came down to the bitter end, and they were all, this place you get your deer every time. There's no, you have the opportunity. You don't walk out of there without one. Well, he was getting real close to walking out of there, and they didn't want that to happen. So they really, they worked hard to get him that. I've never seen a deer cut up so fast. They're literally, it was in, 5 guys stripped that thing down in about 10 minutes, and it was in the cooler still steaming, and we were out the door.
And that there's guys listening to this that says TJ can do that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, again, like kind of going back, like through the whole deer camp vibe, right? So you skipped out on our deer camp. You said there's a lot bigger fish at this other deer camp, and you went up there. So like compare and contrast. Like what is it that like if we're gonna go for like you're the Deer Camp podcast. You've talked to a bunch of different guys that host deer camps, and a lot of people who have these things that that they hold near and dear to their hearts. Like what makes a deer camp? Some deer camps are just all beer and nudie magazines and no hunting, and other camps are it's bacon and eggs, or you start tomorrow's stew before you go to bed, and that's what you look forward to, all of these different aspects. So like what makes it for you? Like if you were going to say, like, for guys who either wanted to start a deer camp when they were going to a deer camp, what is it that you'd say makes a success? I don't even say like a successful deer camp, but in your eyes, like what's the perfect deer camp?
Well, there's it's kind of a, you can take that 2 different ways. What's the perfect deer camp for me, or what's the perfect, like for someone to get into? I say, if you don't have a deer camp and you want to have a deer camp, get a buddy and go camping for the weekend and go hunting. That deer camp can be as simple as eating a mountain house on the back of a tailgate, sleeping in the back of your truck, to going to a high fence ranch for a week and, having lobster and steak and all that stuff served in front of you. My perfect deer camp would be, a group of guys that you all get along and all enjoy, staying in the same spot together, cooking your meals together, talking strategy, talking, hey, I've got, there's this deer over here. Hey, come with me over there. We'll go hunting together. Or, hey, let's go check this spot out together. That's probably my, the everybody working together to help. I mean, when I was down at at your Patreon hunt 2 years ago, I did more driving around looking for a sign for, everybody else than, I did actually hunting because I had more fun. I was having more fun doing that than I didn't need to kill a deer. I can go out back and kill a deer. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
So, I don't, that's anything. I guess the perfect deer camp for me is if you can walk away with a smile on your face at the end of it.
Yeah. I guess I was maybe, yeah, it's very, very subjective answers. But I mean like a construct, right? Like, so if you're going to, um, build a house, like you need this framework. If you're going to, do this, you need a blueprint. So like in your mind, like what makes like, cause you said like a tailgate and a mountain house, like, I mean, a one man deer camp does not, I mean, maybe to some people who have like a lot of
I think
shit
you need
going
two.
on.
You gotta have two to have a camp. You gotta have two guys to have a deer camp. Because if you're laughing by yourself and smiling at the end of it, but if you're by yourself, that might be something wrong. Oh, yeah. I guess I anything that you're stumping me on this one, Adam. And you are good at this. I will give you that.
Well, the thing is that like, you know, if you start a podcast about deer camp and you're really passionate about it and you just want to hear all the stories, and I think I think to me, I guess I would say like for me, it's just like when you have at least two people, but you're hunting again, like with you said, like a group of buddies and all of that. But at the end of the day, like regardless of the outcome, like whether you kill anything or not, that you still had fun, that you still learned something, and you still had like a positive attitude. And I think I think that that's probably the main thing would be like the positive attitude, and it doesn't necessarily have to be attitude towards even towards hunting, right? Like just life, like being able to take something away from it. Like I feel like it's almost like in like the wokest way possible. It's like the men's therapy, right? And I mean, we've talked about that like in our Patreon group, like being able to like be around people who maybe you don't really know very well, and you're like able to be like yourself and like, I don't know, like necessarily like a little bit vulnerable, but like everybody, like I think the thing is like everybody is just like you have to be able to be around people where you can just like talk shit and like know that it's not malicious. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
As long as you have like a positive attitude, it doesn't matter. Like, you know that everybody's just there and fun, and everybody's kind of looking out for one another from that. And I think that that's the thing. And I would imagine, I would be curious to think like, I guess I'll ask you, like, what do you think was like the downfall of the deer camps? Because we see that they're dwindling, and there's guys like you, guys like me that are trying to bring them back.
I honestly probably technology, and the fact that people are so separated from, because deer camps used to be, it was always a lot of, a lot of family, and then close friends and family, and all that, and it just seems like that has gone away from the wayside, if you know what I'm saying. Like, I mean, it's more of everyone's kind of too busy now. Everyone's, it's a fast paced life of what we live in, rather than slowing down and having that, and I don't know if it's just because the old timers treasured it more than, some of us, and maybe we're more few and far between. Um, I went to a deer camp up in Alpena last year, the Ponderosa that Matt Zoll's family has. And it was, I mean, there's 80, 90-year-old guys up there hooting and hollering, singing songs, and having a great old time. And yeah, getting up at 80 years old in the morning and going hunting every day and just having a good old time. And that's the kind of thing I guess I just want to experience every aspect of everybody's deer camp, because there's no deer camp that's the same. There's no, it's like, well, this is the same as this. Everything's variation is just a little bit different. And if you can take all those and maybe take the best of each and put it into yours, maybe you can have the ultimate deer camp.
So let's go through all the people that you've talked to and all the camps that you've been to. Like, what are some of the fun traditions or like idiosyncrasies of each that have like stuck out to you?
Well, like, the Van Hees deer camp is, they watch Descanaba in the moonlight every year. And then, so that's, that always reminds, I'd never sit down at deer camp and watch a movie, but you go up there and you watch it, you watch Escanaba in the moonlight at least one night, there. Um, the Ponderosa was, one of their things was you gotta have a shot when you walk in the door. I mean, just little things like that. The meals, man. The deer camp. I don't know. Something just tastes better at deer camp too. But a cheeseburger at deer camp compared to a cheeseburger at home is always just a little bit sweeter, I guess. And then just the stories and the when somebody comes back in from hunting. Probably my favorite part is when somebody's jacked up, they get back. Man, I just saw the biggest deer of my life, but I couldn't get a shot at it. But man, it was so cool. That kind of those things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think about like if we have any like we for when I was growing up there was always king buck, but
Okay.
like it wasn't like what you would expect it to be kind of. It was just the first buck killed. So like my
Okay.
first year deer hunting when I was with a rifle, I shot like the most barely legal spike. Um 3 inches. It was like 3.25 inches to make it like an antlered deer. I mean, we're talking, and that's being probably gracious. And I was like so happy, but I killed it like right at first light. And another guy killed like a 4 point or something, like at like 10 o'clock. And my deer won me like $220 at 14 years old. And I was exempt from any chores. So I didn't have to do any, uh, I didn't have to do dishes. I didn't have to do anything. And that really got people butthurt and like rethinking like what King Buck was, but it was like the most ridiculous thing. But it was, it was not by the biggest size of deer. It wasn't by weight. It was just the first one down.
So the camp that I went to, that I grew up going to, they had something similar. It was first buck. First buck. It was like a $5 entry fee, and it was for camp members only. So you had to be a member of the camp we were had. It was camp members only, and then there was first buck. There was biggest buck, which would have been points plus width, inside spread plus the width. That would win you that. And then there was non-camp buck, and that would be. I mean, there'd be shits. 40, 50 guys in that one because everyone would come to camp. Everyone would always stop by camp to have a beer and, check out the buck pole because, the buck pole out front. And, but yeah, same thing. You king buck, it was just first buck. But we didn't get away from chores, so I was still doing dishes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I, I was King Buck one time and like, but I think if you were to like, you know, reverse engineer like this whole podcast and my whole mentality, like when I say like we did not grow up like big bucks were, it would be nice, but it wasn't like the thing. And that was, and so for us, well before antler point restrictions, and that was before antler point restrictions. It was three on a side, except your first year. So like that was my only year, only opportunity, only everything. And again, that probably goes to my thought process on like the one buck rule versus antler point restrictions versus, kind of what we got now.
Okay. Yeah. The one buck rule. How do you feel about the one buck rule?
I think that's what it should be. I
I
mean,
agree.
if you go to, but I will give you this, like, for everybody who can like bitch moan and complain, because that's the easiest thing to do about our DNR, about our natural resources committee, all that stuff. Like, we are all part of the problem, right? Like, put up or shut up. We need to be doing more. We need to be involved with these organizations. We need more accountability. Like, there's tons and tons of things that, we can do better. However, if you listen to our biologists, which is like what I think we should be doing, the reason that they're adding these more doe licenses, the reason that they're adding the muzzleloader or the rifles to the muzzleloader season is because we need to kill more deer and we need to kill more does. And so to incentivize killing more deer, whether we kill more does or bucks or whatever, I think ultimately the science, the biologists say we need to kill more deer. And so whether I think this way or that way, I think that that's like the honest to goodness truth of why it is the way that it is. But as far as like the 1 buck rule, like, where do I kill my biggest buck in Ohio? I killed my second biggest buck in Kansas. These are 1 buck states. Indiana's a 1 buck state. Like, any state that, we want to go to for bucks, generally speaking, is going to be a 1 buck state. And somebody's going to say, well, this, that, and the other thing. Well, yeah, okay. I get it. Big bucks are killed everywhere, but there's a reason that Michigan isn't thought of as a 1 buck state, and there's a reason that everybody bitches about it. And, if you gave it, 5 years, and I don't like the earn a buck. I don't like any of that stuff, I think. But I think if you only had 1 buck tag, you'd be more selective, and I think that you would shoot more does, that hunters would shoot more does. And I know that it's like, 7% of guys only kill 2 bucks. So what are we bitching about? But they're holding out. They're not shooting these does because they could shoot a buck. They don't want to mess up their hunt. There could be a buck behind it. And so I think, without actually doing it, that's really hard to, like quantify or like say that. But I mean, in my mind, I think that that's the way that it is and the way it should be. And also I think, and I've said it many times before, that, you may be taking away somebody's first deer and discouraging a kid because they have to wait for a certain size of buck. I do like the opinion that maybe these kids do need to learn some like temperance or like to not shoot. But at the same time, you could be taking away like your grandfather's or that 80-year-old guy who's hooting and hollering. You could be taking away that buck, which could be his last buck. So, I don't like that.
Yeah, I think, to each his own, really. If you're happy with it and it makes you, that's kind of how, and I didn't used to be that way. I used to be like, why would you shoot that? That's 3 years, wall hanger, but I was miserable when I was hunting that way. I thought I was happy, but it was a dream that, too much. I watched too much Outdoor Channel, I guess.
Well, and I think that there's something to. Even with I don't know. I feel like if you got to say it, like, it's going to be negative, but I don't mean this in like a negative way. I mean this in like the most positive way. But I think that by hunting the way that you were hunting before and like going to all these places and trying to chase these other things, what it did is it gave you a very good perspective on like, A, those things aren't guaranteed, and B, it costs a lot of money to not shoot anything, so I might as well have some fun and save my money.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing because it is like, quote unquote, so personal. But in hunting in all of these states, these big buck states, and dealing with these outfitters and these guides and talking to people on the podcast and people from other states and things like that, do you think that people in these big buck states or in 1 buck states, do you think the hunters are happier? Like,
No, probably not. It's probably the same mindset as everybody has. The grass is greener on the other side. Well, oh, I'm in Illinois, but if I was in Iowa, I'd have even bigger deer, or something like that. Uh, I I don't know. I guess whatever makes you happy.
So when and this doesn't necessarily have to do anything with deer camp or anything like that, but just like since we're on the topic of like hunting and having fun and shooting what you want to shoot and hunting your hunt and everything, like from that end, like who inspires you as a hunter?
Nowadays, my kids,
Okay.
getting them out, and I have more fun going out and sitting with my son or my daughter than I ever have, getting up in a tree by myself. The fact that it's pretty rare that I can go behind the house by myself anymore, and I don't regret that one bit. I enjoy every bit of it.
So what do you think their like so from that end, like what do you think their hunting future is? Like what does it look like for them?
Well, if I keep doing the habitat stuff, they should have a pretty good spot to hunt. Um, I don't know. My son's 9 and he's into it. He goes every time he does, but he's not quite there to shoot yet. He doesn't really care. My daughter, who's 5, is ready to gut one herself. So, um, it's tough to tell. I'm not going to push him. I know that I'm going to offer it to him, but I'm never going to push him because I've seen that too many times of people being pushed into it and then they don't. That can be with anything, sports or whatever. But I just want him to have fun with it.
So do you think do you I don't know. This is probably like my own bias coming in, but like but what you were saying with like the habitat stuff and whatever, like do you think that you're like empowering your kids or do you think that you're giving them a crutch? It's like the question I love to ask is would you rather shoot a 150 from the same stand every day or would you rather be able to walk onto any piece of property and kill any deer?
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. Because well, I grew up with you had your spot and that's where you hunted. I was, you had either if you had your tree stand, it was your preset and that's where you hunted, and if you had your gun blind, it was that was your spot, and your bait pile was at 80 yards out when we could bait, and that was that. Now it's your gun blind sitting on a food plot. I guess it's to each his own. I can tell you from the way that I've been doing it the last few years, I don't. I want to do it all. I want to hunt. I want to hunt that. I want to sit in my gun blind during gun season. I want to go out, and hang in a saddle, on state land during, a hunt with a bunch of guys. I want to do, the late season, spot and stalk, through the swamp with the muzzle, well, rifle now, but all those things. I want to experience every bit of it because I think every bit of it's fun. I think you get burned out on doing it just one way. I know I do anyway. I know like I get burned out on definitely sitting, in the same spot looking at the same tree or the same field, day after day. So crutch, I guess whatever it's what you want to get out of it.
Well, but I think back to the basis of the question is like, do you think that you're empowering your kids? I mean, how involved are they in the actual hunt versus the sitting in the iPads and the Cheetos? I mean, because I got the same thing going on. My
Yeah.
daughter, but when we go turkey hunting, we've sat in a blind and we've done some running and gunning and she comes with me scouting on public land and we're looking for beds, we're looking for sheds, we're looking for rubs, we're looking for scrapes, we're doing all this stuff and it isn't yeah, and I understand like on some level it is like grocery shopping, like even when I go up to the UP, like there is a level of that, but for the future of these kids and the future of hunting, like if you die and the farm gets sold, do they continue hunting because they don't have a food plot and a
Right now,
redneck
no.
wise.
There, yeah, I will say absolutely not. The way it is, because I haven't experienced them into that, aspect of the other stuff. So you are, I'll give you that. Yes, they have a crutch at the moment. Will it stay that way? Absolutely not. I mean, now if I die today, yes. But if, in the future when we start, doing other, getting out, going to these camps, like we're going, uh, we're going on a turkey hunt this spring with Kevin Vistison and his son and my son, and we're gonna go stay out on some public land in our campers or our tents, and we're gonna go do some turkey hunting. So he's gonna get his first experience of not seeing shit.
Well, and I think that that's one thing where our like because I was asking myself, that same thing, and circling, coming all the way full circle is that like my kids, or my daughter and my nieces and nephews, they've got their own kids deer camp where they have like their traditions. I mean, I guess we glossed over that is like as soon as we cross the Mackinac Bridge, they can swear, and they're like, you know, middle fingers to the sky, using all these bad words that they don't know what they mean or how to use them like in the proper context. And they think it's just the coolest thing. And like my brother has these stepdaughters that went up there this year for the first time, and they were like really nervous about going up there. They don't really hunt. They didn't want it. And so I asked my brother, like, just recently, I'm like, so do the girls want to go back up there? And he's like, they won't stop talking about it. They just want to know like when, and it kind of goes back to like what we were talking about in that, you don't necessarily have to hunt. You're just in the environment. Everybody's having fun. Everybody's doing the same thing. They get to go out and track deer. They didn't have to pull the trigger. They didn't have to do anything. But they were along for the ride. They were dragging deer. They watched us gut them. They ate the heart. They did all the things. And I think that might be even in this day and age with all of the technology, because of all the kids and because of the weather and all that stuff. Like I brought Starlink up there this year, and they were super ecstatic to have that, but they wanted to go out and try and shoot squirrels. They wanted to go shoot the 22. They wanted to go ride the 4-wheeler. They wanted to go do all of this stuff also. And I think that, I don't know, maybe that's like
No, you're exactly right with that, because when we we did the early doe hunt thing, same thing, the kids, and the guys, and yeah, they rode bikes all over camp, and we roasted hot dogs on the fire, and uh, Shane and I went and sat under a tree and had a doe come to like 10 yards, exactly, and they didn't, same thing. We had service, but they stayed off those tablets 90% of the time because they were having doing their own traditions of building the fort in the woods and riding their bikes and all that. So I I don't know.
yeah. And I think that that's like, something that like kind of like everybody needs. And I think one of the things about deer camp that we haven't really talked about is like the struggles. Like if you're at a high fence ranch, or if you're at one of these outfitters, like you were talking about, it's like, did he pay him more? Did he do this? But like when the, when it's a level playing field and, you guys are all like just figuring it out on your own, and there is somebody who's struggling, you got somebody to ask those questions with. There's the aspect of like learning and like the support system. And there are guys who are like going to be inherently better or have like a different circumstance who are not even there for like the hunt. They're just there for fun. And so to have like that support system, not even to like quote unquote, like teach you like I'm better than you, let me show you. But it's just like, hey, you're struggling. Let's go try and work. Let's go try and figure it out, And I think that that's one thing, like with the kids, is they have the same thing. Like I think I said it on the podcast before, but I'm not sure. I sat with like all my nieces and my daughter, and they're like the antlers don't matter. Who cares? Like, we're still going to eat it. And they're like, my one niece who already, she shot a doe last year. And she is like, I just want to shoot a buck. So I shot like a buck and a doe. And she's like, then I would just rather that like somebody else gets to shoot one because I've already shot one of each and it doesn't really matter to me. You know, I'll shoot one if I get an opportunity, but like I would just as soon someone else gets an opportunity so that everybody can shoot one, you know? And it's like, so many things like, you know, when they say like from the mouths of babes, like when it's like they're learning about hunting like through us. Right. And so if it was just only about big bucks and about like my family killed deer and your family didn't kill deer, like we're so much better, you know, that's when you stop going to deer camp, right? it's that inclusion, it's that, you know, helping each other out, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Helping your buddy drag his deer out, helping, you know, yeah, that's kind of what camp should be all about. It should be about everybody helping everybody to achieve the same goal.
Okay. So for you, you are going to be, you're one of the panel speakers. I've been on that boat for Kevin's Deer Hunter Collective this year. Like what's your area of expertise, or what are you up there supporting?
Well, I'm a little bit of deer camp stuff, but mainly I'm gonna be there talking habitat work with Jared, and the vitalize, pushing the vitalize, and talking about hinge cutting and all that good jazz. We're gonna talk a little bit about some deer camp traditions and that, and really, I'm not sure. I don't know I'm not really sure why I'm on the panel, but I'll go up there and sit. Why not? You gotta have one fuddy duddy up there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, but it's a really interesting thing. It's super cool, but like to be up there in front of everybody, and if you're like, I don't know, I felt like when I was up there, like I'm not the awkward silence kind of guy, so I'm like running the like, hey you, what about this? What about that? What about this? And but it's different when like you got 200 sets of eyes staring back at you. It's a whole nother adventure.
Yeah, we'll see. We might. Well, who knows what side of me we'll see on that? I'm either gonna be, I'll be on my A game, or I'm gonna be the. But no, I'm looking forward to it. Good group on that panel. He's always got a good group on that panel, but it should be a good time. Next weekend in Mayo. Hopefully they've got power. As of yesterday, they had gotten it back, but we're supposed to get another storm tonight. So I don't know. It's bad out there.
So from that, like, what are you from the panel? Like, what are you looking to get out of it? Like when I was there, it was just it was like just supporting Kevin and meeting new people and all that. But like for you, like with like a budding podcast and you're really enjoying it. For you, what are your expectations?
I'm more excited to just listen to the Boogeyman give his live podcast more than anything. I mean, that guy should have his own TV show. I'm looking forward to, honestly, the panel part we'll talk. I'm looking forward to just talking to the guys, in intermissions and at lunch and all that stuff, hey, where are you from? Oh, cool. Hey, I shot this year. Check this out. That's more exciting to me than any part of it, I would say.
Pledge of Allegiance too.
Yes, the Pledge of Allegiance, absolutely.
One more thing I wanted to talk to you about, because you just came back from like what was that show in Wisconsin?
Oh, that was the Wisconsin Open Season Expo.
Okay. Yeah, Andy, he was at ATA with Jared, and he came through clutch. Him and Jared, we talked about it with the Jack's Pizzas.
That's all Jared. I can't take Jared. That was all Jared. I was buying booze. He was buying pizzas. He goes, "We're gonna want these." I said, "Probably a good idea."
But going back and forth just recently, you were like, this open season show is way bigger than like ATA, like a lot more people.
Yep.
all that. And I thought that was important to bring up, and really kind of like the way that ATA is going. I'm going to try and I might change next year. I haven't been to the NWTF, and I think that's one that I'm gonna try to put on the calendar. It's kind of tough because next year, for whatever reason, it like piggybacks right up to Harrisburg, and it goes through the same weekend as Harrisburg. But like the consumer shows versus like your first ATA show, like in this being a big consumer show, because you and I had talked about, the little rinky dink ones that you have in your town that, they have 100 outfitters and then like 15 other booths and beef jerky and whatnot, so like one of the larger ones, let's say Iowa Deer Classic, the one that you're talking about, open season, and like NWTF, that scale of a show. So for you, like, for a regular guy who's like always wanted to go to ATA versus some of these other shows, what was your experience?
With ATA, I mean, I thought ATA, I was overwhelmed by ATA, but I also hadn't been to ATA in its heyday. So, I mean, it was, it was definitely, it was enjoyable because it wasn't so packed, but the just the sheer volume of people going through that open season, just, I mean, it just, I didn't even know. I mean, I walked across the skywalk getting over there, and it was nothing but a line of cars as far as you could see to get into this convention center at 9 o'clock in the morning, and that's when it opened. I mean, just right there, ready to go. People, spending money, talking to everybody. I ATA was awesome. Don't get me wrong. I had a lot of fun. But like you said, it's a whole different atmosphere. That's a consumer, a buyer's show basically, and this open season is a consumer show. So I thought it was awesome. I'm gonna go back. I know that.
But if you like, so next year, if you could only go to one, which one would you go to?
Open season for sure. But it's also biased because I can take my family with me and they can go to the water park and enjoy the resort while I do the sportsman's thing. So biased on that part of it, I guess.
Well, but I think for like a regular guy or someone listening to this podcast, I think that that's a very valid. I mean, if you're not me, I guess, if you, like, my wife doesn't care whatever I do. Like, oh, I'm going here, I'm going there. Like, okay, whatever. But most people, regular people, like people who have, families and wives and obligations, and they only have so much time off, you have to make these trade-offs, right? Like, so if you want to go to this show, well, you're going to waste how much of your PTO, and you're going to spend how much money to go to this thing. I think that's valid to be able to say like, hey, we're going to go here. I'm going to go do my thing, and then we can spend time at the water park, and I'll get to do, I'll get to hang out with my internet hunting buddies, and so I think that that's a very valid point, right? And I get asked all the time, like, so does your wife and you bring your daughter and your wife to things like this? And I'm like, no, my wife would absolutely hate it, and my daughter is already like, are you going to talk to everybody? Like, yeah, probably. Like, so it's just, what it is.
Yep. Well, I mean, you're a lucky man in that aspect of your wife. Grew up in the same kind of family my wife did. Of like your father-in-law, Uncle Frank, was, excuse me, a huge hunter, and so she, same with my wife's dad. He was a huge hunter, so it's just normal to her, I guess. And but I enjoy taking them. Like, they walked around the show with me. We went and we talked to some of our friends of the podcast. Like Uncle Lou was there. We hung out with him for a while, and went and saw Dieter, and they had fun with that. But they were there for an hour, and that was enough for them. Where I could have spent all day walking around, talking to people, looking at stuff. Or I did spend all day.
Yeah. And so, we'll say Andy and his. The Deer Camp podcast, they donated a great pole saw to the the Bowman's Club for our fundraiser dinner, and it was funny because it showed up on my doorstep, and I didn't know what he was sending. And my wife's like, "Did you order a saw of some sort?" And I'm like, no, I don't think so. So then I tracked it down. But you were at the open season show in support of Ryan at Antler Anchor.
Yes.
And you said he had sent some stuff for us too. So tell us a little bit about that since you got some time here.
Yeah. Tell you about Antler Anchor Company there, or
Yeah.
Ryan. Yeah. So Ryan's, he's a guy from Wisconsin that started this, shed holder / Euro holder / a way to just spread your trophy, and he had reached out to me about, just wanting to come on the podcast, and so we did a podcast, and we kind of just, became friends from that. And he was doing this and asked me if I wanted to come over, and I said absolutely, let's come over, and I'll hang out, and we'll do some stuff and hang out, and just a down to earth guy that's making a pretty cool product out of, with a CNC machine. So
Yeah, and I'm excited to check it out. I got to order some I got this pile of sheds here, and I say that like, oh yeah, I got this pile of sheds. Like, no, like these are all the sheds I've ever found in my whole life, and they just fit on this little thing. But I found 2 good ones that are really too annoying. Like I have to keep moving. They don't pile up next to the like dinks that I found, and it just makes it, they don't stack right. So having something like that, but it looks like his products are like stainless steel or aluminum. Like it's a nice looking, like sturdy product that is aesthetically pleasing. Looks pretty cool.
yeah, absolutely, they're gorgeous. It's his whole thing is, you can have this thing on the wall, you can pull it off, you can play with it, you can talk, let somebody hold it, and then you can put it back up, and it's got a nice display going there. In fact, I should have them on the wall already, but I haven't done that yet because procrastination is in my blood.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
Ryan, and Ryan's the first, same thing. Ryan is first guy to, you ask him for, hey, we're doing this thing. Would you mind making it? It's in the mail. It's coming. It's on its way. Same kind of, just a stand up guy. I hope he's got a great product, and I think he's going to do very, very well.
Awesome, cool. So besides the you said you got the deer camp coming up with Kevin for turkey season. You're going to be speaking up there. What else you got going on?
Well, I just confirmed that we're going to be doing a hunt in West Virginia this year. I'm going to be doing that, and we'll be doing some podcasts from that with some guys. But I'm going to draw Iowa this year, and so I'm going to put a lot of my time into going out there. I'm still going to do a couple more. I think I have three camps right now on the books of different spots, to go to do, to see some beer camps. 2 new ones, one over on the east side, and then one south. So we're gonna go do our deer camp series again. Be a little smaller than last year, but I enjoy it, man. I love just coming and seeing, everybody's deer camps.
So I gotta ask about Iowa. Are you going for bow, for rifle, for muzzleloader?
I'm gonna go with a bow. I'm gonna try. This is kind of gonna be like I think it's gonna be my one and done. Well, I shouldn't say one and done, but I mean it's 6 years now to draw Iowa, and I'm not a spring chicken anymore. So it'd be. But I'm gonna try. I'm gonna go for bow this year. I'm gonna go to an outfitter. But I'm gonna go to one that I've actually like really reputable outfitter. So I'm gonna try that and try to see what I can come up with.
And is it a solo deal, or are you going with buddies, or?
I know some other guys that are going to the same spot. I don't know how exactly it's all going to work out. The details haven't been finalized yet, but yeah, there should be another guy or 2 out there that I'll
And
know.
what? I mean, I'm like, so what's making you decide? Why did you decide to go to an outfitter instead of like just go bang it out on public?
Uh, the fear of coming home empty-handed, even though like it just contradicted everything I said earlier. Um, just not, the fact that if it was like a Kansas where I could go and, not next year, but the year, go this year, wait a year, go the following year, which who knows with the point creep. But if I could do it like that, it'd probably be different. But I mean, I've been this is going to be my 6th sixth thing, I'm gonna have a bunch of money into this, and I don't know. My brain went back to going to an outfitter, and I talked to some guys that have been to this outfitter that have done very well. So we're gonna give her a go.
And what are the expectations then? Like, what is very well, and like, where do you draw the line for Like, I guess does this outfitter have like minimums? Does it have like how does it?
Yeah, I think you got like a 140 minimum. So a 140 and 2/8 is good enough for me.
So tell me, how do you judge that on the hoof?
Fuck if I know. Make sure you have enough money in your checkbook.
Yeah, I mean that's
the truth. That's the truth. You've got to. I mean, like I said, I shot a penalty buck. The first year I went to Illinois, the guide took me out to hey, there's a stand down here. Go down here. On this farm's an 11 with a kicker or a 10 with a kicker. Well, what came out? A 10 with a kicker, and I'm like, man, it sure don't look very big, but. I don't know. He said 10 with a kicker. Well, when I shot it and I dropped it, when I spined it and it's laying right there, I'm like, well, that's definitely going to cost me some money. But yeah, so no, I don't. I luck of the draw, I guess. Kind of like throwing money in a slot machine.
Well, I'm excited to kind of follow along with that and just see how it works. I hope that you do a good job, like of documenting it, because. Like I say, for me, it's one of those things where it's always like, I don't know. I just want to be able to do it. I don't think it's as much an ego thing as like, I want to be able to like do whatever I want. Like, I'd go to Iowa and shoot a 125 and be ecstatic. And people would be like, oh, you're so absurd. Like, what are you doing? Like, I don't care. Like, I don't have enough 125s on the wall. I don't have enough 100-inch bucks on the wall to be like, saying, oh, well, but I also don't want to pay an extra $2,500 for something that I was happy with when I pulled the trigger,
Yep.
So yeah. So for anybody that's, wants to follow along or whatever, where can they do that?
You can find us on Instagram, the Deer Camp Podcast. And then the Deer Camp Podcast on, pretty much any podcast, wherever you listen to your podcast at, Spotify, Apple, iHeart, all that good stuff. And then just not really much on Facebook, but Andrew Hutchens on Facebook. We don't have a Deer Camp Podcast thing on Facebook. So, but yeah, that's where you can find us. We're usually posting something stupid.
Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate it, and I'm glad that I can call you a friend.
Yeah, absolutely.
You came on here and we could have this conversation. So.
Absolutely. We'll definitely have to do it again, man.